I'm going to share my screen now. All right, let's just make sure you guys can see everything here. All right, here's our slide. So we'll do some quick tips. Everyone is on mute, but if you'd like to ask a question, please feel free to unmute yourself, or you can also type in the chat. There's only a couple of us here, so please don't hesitate to unmute yourself. If you do decide to pop something over in the chat, Annalie will be able to let me know because I cannot see it while I'm sharing my screen. We really want this presentation to be super interactive, so please ask questions and please participate as much as you'd like. Let's talk a little bit about Bierman. Bierman is a place where we have younger kids anywhere from ages about 18 months, anywhere up to about 9 or 10 years old, and they engage in play to learn the really tight foundational skills needed for language acquisition and to build communication and things such as self-advocacy. So one thing here at Bierman is we recognize that every kid's success is super unique. And so we take a very individualized one-on-one approach that allows us to drive progress using measurable outcomes while each child is advancing on their own terms. Our staff is so dedicated to really learning the children with whom they work and really learning their preferences. And so we take the things that all of the kids like and we kind of hone in on that and use that as a focus to help decide and guide what skills we're teaching and what language we're teaching. I'd love to ask you guys a quick question. How much experience do you have with ABA? I think I've got a chat. Feel free to write in the chat, or also you can feel free to unmute yourself as well.
The chat is disabled, but with ABA specifically, I have 0 or A.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Annalie, if you want to take a look and see if we can enable the chat, that would be great too. So,
yes, ma'am.
Thank you. We're not diving really too much into ABA or the foundations of ABA today, but everything that we sort of present on and talk about always uses basically the skills of ABA to help teach our kids different skills, and today will be play. So our training objectives for today are we're going to describe 4 of the main benefits to play. Summarizing the 6 stages of play will really help you to sort of focus in on what current stage your child is at. And then we can take that to pinpoint strategies that you can use when you play and selecting skills that you can teach your children during play too. I really like this quote by Fred Donaldson. It says, "Children learn as they play, and more importantly, in play, children learn how to learn." And so that learning how to learn allows them to open up their whole world to see and be exposed to new things and language. And so we really, really like to put a really heavy focus on play here at our centers as well. Some of the importance of play skills is knowing what to expect out of your child's play. It can help you support your child as they learn to play with their siblings, friends, and peers. In general, it helps to promote brain function. It increases communication and language development. It helps to develop and improve social skills, as well as decrease rigid and repetitive behaviors. Tyson, compared to language development, how important would you say play skills are to you and your family?
Very important. I think that there's a great benefit in utilizing play at the child's level to incorporate teachings.
Yes, definitely. I totally agree with that. I would say that it's probably just as important to me, play skills, as language skills. And then how about as challenging behavior? How important would play skills be to you compared to challenging behavior?
One compared to the other, I think that play can help relieve some of the anxiety or stress that may be causing the challenge, and it could help facilitate that learning.
Totally. I love that answer. Yes. I definitely think that, by increasing play skills in a child, it helps to decrease challenging behavior in itself. So it makes it so important at the same level. Let's talk a little bit about the stages of play. So there's 6 main stages of play, and as we go through them, one will kind of build on the other, and you'll oftentimes see them kind of developmentally progress. So oftentimes play starts as solitary play. This picture does a really nice job describing with a visual effect of what that might look like. So sort of just kind of playing by themselves, not really noticing others, but maybe noticing toys of others. Onlooker play is where your child is still playing by themselves, but they really start to hone in on what other kids are doing. It's really a foundational skill to being able to learn to copy other kids, which sort of catapults learning for children. And then the next stage would be parallel play, which is playing near others or with similar toys, but not necessarily interacting yet. So there's a lot of stages of play that happen before, asking questions or asking to play with one another that are all critical to the foundation of play in itself. Cooperative play is when you have children that start to play with each other and try to achieve a common goal. Sometimes that will be in beginner games, or sometimes it will be in building a tower together. It really does range in complexities, and even kids who are much older who engage in different types of pretend play, a lot of times they'll still do cooperative play as well. So that one sort of umbrellas across a lot of skills and play stages as it goes forward. And then pretend play begins to evolve, where you're able to start experimenting with different social and emotional roles. It takes a lot of complex language and understanding to be able to pretend play and understanding how items function. But it's really awesome when kids start to, play with each other and start to be creative and pretend that bananas are phones and all of that sort of stuff. And then you have associative play, which is sharing toys and communicating with others during play. So that's sort of that last stage that then continues just to build and build and build as they learn language, as they're exposed to new toys, and as they learn from others. Out of each stage of play, which does your child currently exhibit most frequently? Solitary or onlooker play, parallel or cooperative play, or pretend or associative play? Well, whichever stage that your child exhibits, we're going to sort of dive into each of them. And so just keep this in mind as we're starting to learn more about the skills that we can teach within play. A quick, I have something in the chat. Oh, okay, that's fine. Thank you, Annalie. She's still trying to work on getting the chat to work for you. So please feel free to unmute yourself as much as you'd like. Pretend play is really an umbrella skill. It starts really early and it evolves as other play skills and language skills develop. One thing is that it can really occur simultaneously with a lot of other skills, sort of how I had described the cooperative play. And it can range from things as simple as, pretending a banana is a phone, to creating complex roles like playing restaurant and deeming somebody be the chef and they're the waiter or something of that nature. It also requires a certain amount of language development and understanding. And so as pretend play grows, so does that language and concept understanding. When considering what your child might be ready for, it's important to look for missing smaller skills. So, really, those fundamental skills that are required to execute a task. That could be something like motor skills, such as throwing a ball, or something even such as pinching. It could be smaller skills when you're thinking of engaging in pretend play with a dollhouse. You have to understand the functions of stairs and the function of a bathtub to be able to pretend that the doll is climbing upstairs or that the doll is taking a bath. When you're playing with a dollhouse, it's good to know what sort of furniture you find in a bedroom or you find in a kitchen to be able to set up your dollhouse in a way that might mimic your own home. And then when we're talking about, the skills that come with doing a puzzle, for example, puzzles, there's a ton of different kinds of puzzles. You have identical inset puzzles where the picture on the piece matches precisely what the picture on the board is. Excuse me. And so that would be a little bit less complex than, let's say, a 24-piece jigsaw puzzle where you really have to match small parts to interlock those pieces. So when we're thinking of what is my child ready to learn, we can look at maybe a larger skill that we want to teach and then breaking that skill down to see what smaller steps might need to go in there to achieve that. All right, setting up a play session. So the very first thing that we need to do is to create a goal. What does your child's play look like now is something that you really want to consider. What would you like your child's play to look like? These goals could be for you and for your child. Tyson, if you want to write into the chat, feel free to write something about a goal that you might have for you and your child when considering play. It can range from goals such as being able to accept a toy that you give your child. It could be something to answer the questions from before. Oh, you have over a year of experience with ABA and there's parallel protective. Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Yes, okay, that's wonderful. So pretend play, parallel play, and it was also mentioned that a child loves to play with friends and share. So when we're thinking of the goals that you might have, maybe it is kind of expanding on that play with friends or cooperative play. I love that. Being able to learn the rules of a game is a really good one to consider as well. Things like Candyland or cooperative play like Sneaky Snacky Squirrel, if you've heard of that one. All right, create a goal. So when you are creating a goal, you want to start small and think about what would be realistic. So if your child already loves to engage in pretend play and they're engaging in some parallel play, maybe the next step would be starting to continue to watch, other kids play or watching or copying skills that you might model for them when they're playing. Another thing could be such as just initiating play with new toys. If they love to play with the same things, maybe we want to work on expanding their repertoire of play or things that they're being creative and playing with in a pretend fashion. Could also be things, like I said, rules of a game or even taking turns with a toy. Let's share a little bit. So what goal, following some of those examples, do you have any goals in mind that you might like to choose for your child? That will help us sort of guide the discussion as we go through the rest of this training. Yeah, cooperative play is a really great game. or I'm sorry, a really great goal. And it can be quite a range, right? So it might be something just as building a tower, right? If we're not ready to jump into those games that require rules, having a common goal within play, maybe building a tent or building a fort could be a really good cooperative play without having to really know how to use the rules of a game. So once we've kind of come up with our goal, the next thing that we'll want to do is to choose the materials with our goal in mind. And so when we're talking about the materials we're using, we really want to think about what our goal is and what sort of behavior we're looking to see. I want to give you guys a couple examples here. So this is perfect for our kids who like to share. So when we're targeting sharing, choosing items or toys that have a ton of pieces, because that allows us to have repeated sharing opportunities. Or if we're choosing something where we want a child to learn how to play with, a toy in more than one way, we might want to choose items that are more versatile and complex, like a play kitchen. When targeting imitation, when targeting imitation within play, we're looking at choosing items with very clear functions and less distracting elements. So it sounds like, something for both of your children, it would be great to target things that have some variance and more complexity to them and allow for some versatility and modeling to happen. If you have something specific you really want to teach, it's important to sort of minimize the distractions. That can be sort of removing the other toys from the environment and helping to declutter the space, turning off electronics, or going to a room away from others in the house. If you're practicing with a peer or sibling, giving instructions to your child and the peer prior to the interaction, especially if you're working on cooperative play, or it's really good to say, hey, what's our common goal before we kind of jump into the toys. That way you guys both have an idea of what you guys are working towards in that cooperative play manner. When engaging with a peer or a sibling, you might also choose to coach the peer or sibling during the interaction instead of providing prompts to the child whose goals you're trying to reach. That will sometimes allow them to be a little bit more attentive to their peers and their siblings, which could result in more learning from their peers and siblings as well. It's super important for you to get involved. I think that there's a very fine line between getting involved and being too involved, right? It's important for us to let our children guide play and us kind of making it better as we can, and teaching them or playing with items in new ways, which is why I love to have toys that have multiple pieces. So if your child's not necessarily discovering on their own how to engage, yeah, you like to let your son take the lead. I think it's really wonderful because sometimes, we end up interrupting when we're trying to be involved. So seeing how they play and letting them guide and sort of going from there. Observing their natural play behavior to sort of get ideas on where you can start. Let's say they're pretending, all of these blocks are different food items and they're pretending to make a meal, and then you start to make the car or make all of the blocks a car wash. It might be a little bit confusing. And so, like we said earlier, kind of coming across a common goal in the beginning and then following their lead would definitely allow you to hone in on their interests when trying to maximize play. Another thing that I find is super, super important is to celebrate. Every time that your child's deciding to play in new ways or tolerate new things in their environment, we want to celebrate them. We want to show them how blocks can become rocket ships and we can launch them to the moon and then they copy you. You know, we want to reward that new play behavior by doing it all over again and making something just as cool again, or expanding on it and doing other cool things with the rocket ship, like, you know, maybe twirling it around Earth or something of that sort. Right. I said, I feel like my son gets distracted, so I have to be really silly. Yeah. Sometimes, you know, so if your child really loves when you be silly, that's something of his interest that you can really hone in on when you're getting involved and trying to model new things for him. Some things to avoid. While there are many ways that you can make an activity more fun, there's also things that you could do that make the activity a little bit more aversive or maybe not as exciting. One thing is asking a bunch of questions. What are you playing? What are you going to do next? You know, it's sort of when we're in the process of doing things, we don't necessarily like to explain what it is that we're doing. And all of our children feel the same way. An alternative is to sparingly narrate the play or narrate the things that you see them doing. Another thing that we want to try to avoid is removing toys from their hands if we're trying to teach a new skill. So having plenty of the same, you know, lots of blocks or a bunch of different balls, all sorts of different materials and extra materials so that you can kind of have your own objects. Let's share a little bit. So, what interests you when it comes to playing with your child? What are some of your barriers, or what are some of your current goals? I saw that you guys had mentioned some sharing and some cooperative play. So, what's something that you might like to work on with your child specifically for you? Yeah, fostering growth and independence. That's a great mindset to have. Yeah, playing with being able to play for a few minutes with a task, that's a really hard one. And you had also mentioned getting him to focus. And so having less things in the environment probably might help so that he's not like bouncing, you know, to a ton of different things. Although there's nothing wrong with that. And over time, you know, developmentally, or as time goes on, kids start to, you know, learn to play with things as they get a little bit older. I heard this saying once that a child should only be able to play by themselves for as many years as they are. So if you have a 2-year-old, about 2 minutes would be an expectation of how long they would be able to sort of play independently without needing a little bit of support to foster that play. I love those answers. Thank you guys for sharing that. Our training is going a little bit quicker than anticipated. So I have a couple frequently asked questions, but before I jump into them, I wanted to open up the room to see if there's any questions that you guys have regarding play. Thank you. I understand that. And I'm sorry that that's something that you're having difficulty seeing as well. And I think, you know, over time, the things that your children are related to or are interested in are just as important as the thing that other kids might be interested in. It's just sort of, you know, finding where their good company is and finding children that are interested in the same things as them. All right. So some of the frequently asked questions that I have that we have are, technology. There's nothing wrong with technology, and using it when you have to. Avoiding the use of technology when targeting play skills, however, is pretty important because it impedes attention to others in the environment. If you're trying to pair yourself or model activities with a child and they're watching a show on the iPad, it's really difficult to sort of cultivate the value of how important the things are that you're doing, because let's be honest, it's sort of hard to compete with Baby Shark or whatever the video is they might like to watch. Instead of using technology during play, you could use it as a reward for engaging in a separate play task. You could also just use it as sparingly throughout the day when you need a couple minutes to cook dinner. It's really important to use first then statements if they have difficulty with transitioning to or away from technology or even highly preferred things, and providing clear guidelines for how long and when your child will be able to access that technology. Another question we sometimes get is, what if my teaching is not working? There's a couple things. It could be the skill that you've selected, or the goal might be too difficult for the child at this time. It's also possible that the child isn't motivated enough for the things that you've selected or the play that you've selected. If this does happen, there's always alternatives and there's things that you can try. One would be selecting an easier skill with the same materials, right? So if you're wanting them to practice, let's just say throwing a ball back and forth, and that's a little bit difficult, you could practice working together to get the ball in the hoop. That would allow you to use the same materials. You would still be engaging in cooperative play, but it would be something that's a little bit more attainable for them. You might also choose to switch out the materials if they're not showing any interest in it, or manipulating the environment. A lot of times, the answer is really simple, and it's just looking at what's around you, decluttering your space. It sort of adds value to the things that you want to be focused on. And then providing a different reinforcer or reward. If your child doesn't currently, contact the natural contingencies of playing, sometimes you can use a different reward for it, right? So if you, let's say your child loves when you're silly or loves to be tickled, and you want to try to teach them to pretend play with the kitchen. Maybe, after they pretend to cook a dinner, you fly them into the food and they pretend to eat it, or a different way to sort of engage them in the things that they already love with the new things that you're trying to teach them. And then if you run out of ideas, if you are currently a part of an ABA program, you can always ask your behavior analyst for help. The clear takeaways from this are to create a goal, select toys, oftentimes thinking of toys that have multiple materials, and then setting up your environment, decluttering, and sort of giving a good focus onto the materials that you want them to use. And then first being observant and then trying to get involved. Thank you so much for coming, Tyson. I really appreciate it. So that is all I have. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm happy to hang on and answer them. If not, thank you so much for coming, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening or day, whatever time zone you're coming from.